I think the kind of the best thing about what we do is, as an industry, like we're who people turn to celebrate, or to fall in love, or to celebrate love, or anything as corny as that. It really is. It's us to deliver the best nights of people's lives.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Australia is somewhat of an anomaly. The culinary landscape is built off the back of migration patterns by those that have chosen to make their lives down under. What is it about Australia that captures the imagination of so many hospitality professionals? Casey Wall is a chef and co-owner of Bar Liberty, Falco and Capitano in Melbourne. Casey, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you today?
I'm good. It's great to get you on the show. You've got a couple of cracking venues making such a huge impact on the culinary landscape in Melbourne. How are things going?
Everything's going really well for us. It's obviously the worst time of the year for weather, but other than that, I think everyone's got used to it being cold and dreary, so they're coming back out in full force and embracing this winter period that I hate so much about Melbourne.
Well, it's well documented that Melbourne and Victoria experienced, some pretty brutal lockdowns over the last couple of years with the turbulence of COVID. But you've got 3 different venues. Is there a sense of optimism and sort of leaving that all behind now?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we all just try not to talk about it ever again. So I think for most of us, we try to block that out of our memories. But I think everything is starting to self-correct. Starting to see more international chefs and students coming back in, which fills a small gap of the employment market. And yeah, that's really the biggest thing post-lockdown was the lack of staff, whether, chefs left the industry or they just disappeared, full stop, going back to their native countries. But yeah, I think everything is really on the way up now.
Do you approach things a little bit differently, with 3 very different businesses sort of than you perhaps would have 3 or 4 years ago?
I think so. It's I think the biggest growth that me and my business partner have kind of done personally was just really stepping back to allow the talented staff that we have hired over the years to just do their thing and not try to micromanage. Like, it's really hard to let go of something that you opened and had success with, but you also have to trust that you can hire employees that have the same vision as you do, even though they may not get to the same result on the same path. So that's something that's really helped us in retaining staff and growing and making the business more fun for everyone.
Well, what have been some of the benefits for you with that sort of approach, even though it was difficult to let go a little bit?
I think you definitely learn more. You only know what you know. Obviously, surrounding yourself by talented chefs, you can teach each other little things and systems. But if you're still running the show, you kind of restrict growth in a way. I mean, you do embrace like ideas and changes, but still, at the end of the day, you're like, you're still putting your thumbprint on the things. Like, stepping back allows systems to really develop and new ideas to really come out, and viewpoints and ideas that you never would have gotten to if you were still even like minutely micromanaging. It's interesting to see how the young chefs embrace and grow faster if you just take that little step back.
You have an incredible knack of creating venues that are really sort of part of the new wave of dining and eating out in Australia. Tell us a little bit about the 3 venues that you've got.
I guess the oldest one now would be Bar Liberty. That's just our little wine bar here. We opened that in, oh man, I can't even remember when we opened that, what year that was. 2000, and I know I told you an email, but 2017 maybe? I may be wrong on that. It's just, we didn't know what to do, and when what we were doing when we opened it, we wanted to create a venue that anyone could use in whatever manner that they wanted. In the very beginning days, it was very much used as a wine bar. We'd have people coming in, having some wine and a snack, leaving, having a lot of fun, going to their dinner, and then coming back afterwards and staying until we closed because it had so much time or so much fun in the venue. And then over a few months, people were like, "Oh, the food's pretty good here," so they ended up staying, and then it just blew up at that point. It's more 50-50 restaurant wine bar now than it was when we first started, which might have been like 80% wine bar, 20% restaurant. So it's pretty fun to see it grow. We didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable coming in and only having a glass of wine, because there were some of these venues in Melbourne that if you just did that, it was really awkward just to have a nice glass of wine and chat with your friend. It was definitely a restaurant built as a wine bar, and we wanted no one to feel uncomfortable in this space. So it did take some time to grow, but I think Melbourne's fully embraced any customer at this point on the back of the lockdown and with the lingering recession. So you'll take whoever you can get in the doors at this time. Um, Capitano is it's an Italian-ish restaurant, I would say. I mean, there is pizza and pastas, but it's not firmly rooted in the Melbourne like tradition of so many great Italian venues across town. We want to do something a little different. I didn't grow up really eating much Italian food, but I've always enjoyed it living in New York City and stuff. So we wanted to have pizzas and pastas that we all love to eat, but with our little spin on them. And some of it gets fairly traditional, then some of it can get a little out there. But I still think it's a super tasty restaurant, and a lot of hard work goes into making the pizza doughs and pastas and stuff every day. So it's a simple space. It's a simple menu, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes. I think that's what we do pretty well across all our venues, is hide the amount of work that we do in delivering the product. And then finally, the newest one, which is I guess 4 years old now, is Falco. That was probably lucky we opened it when we opened it, because it opened in December of 2019. If we drug our feet anymore on that, we may not have a venue today, because that was just on the cusp of the COVID outbreak. I guess March 2020 was about when it kicked off here. So it was we just had enough time to get it going, and then lockdown happened, and actually we were probably busier in lockdown than we are now. Oddly enough, I think bakeries across Australia did really well in that time.
They certainly did. There's so much to talk about with what you're doing at the moment, and also delve into the world of Rockwell and Sons, which we can get to shortly. But take us back to when you were young. You're originally from North Carolina. What was life like for you when you were a kid, and what sort of role did food play?
I think food was way more important than I thought it was growing up. I think when you're around great food a lot, you don't necessarily know that that's not normal. My grandmother was a great cook, cooked just Southern food, nothing else. There was never any deviation of it. It was squash casserole, pinto beans and cornbread, biscuits. She made rolls, lots of pies, chicken and dumplings, like stuff like that, things you've heard about in Southern food. My family background has always been kind of farming, tobacco fields in North Carolina, which is a huge industry that has since kind of dropped off for obvious reasons. And we also had a dairy farm in our family. So farming's always been a big part of what we did. And preservation was huge. My grandmother's basement was just filled with jars of everything from summer, green beans, corn, preserved squashes, tomatoes. She just had jars of tomatoes that we used throughout the year. It was different. I just didn't know that wasn't a normal thing to do until I got out on my own and met other people. And then there wasn't much grocery shopping. My grandfather, you see them all over the South, these old men in overalls, and it could be 100 degrees or what's that, 40-ish degrees Celsius, outside. He's in overalls and a flannel shirt sitting under the shade tree with a little table selling all his stuff he grew in the farm, tomatoes, cucumber, squash. It's fun. That's how a lot of people do grocery shopping. Maybe not. There's still people doing that nowadays, but it's way less of a common occurrence. I think that older generation has finally passed away. But yeah, growing up, you would just stop on the side of the road and grab, tomatoes and cucumbers on the way home after baseball practice or whatever, and that was dinner.
Is there any sort of dish, from your childhood or the region or North Carolina that you look back fondly of that you can share with us?
My favorite dish to eat growing up were pinto beans and cornbread. That was a staple. We had that all the time. So one of my great grandmothers made an incredible strawberry pie that resonates pretty strongly in my memories. But also like peach cobbler. Peach cobbler is probably one of my all-time favorites. Of the stuff that my family cooked, also there's a huge tradition of barbecue in North Carolina, and that was a cornerstone of that's probably the only thing we really paid for growing up eating out, is at barbecue restaurants.
Tell us about sort of that period of time after you've left school. Were you always headed for a career in food, or were you on a different path?
No, not at all. I thought I was just going to be a lifelong student. I went to school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just kept taking more classes. Ended up double majoring with a couple of minors, and that took me an extra semester to knock out. So I stayed at school for an extra semester, 4.5 years as opposed to the normal 4 years. And I applied to the grad schools, applied to some law schools. I wasn't sure why I applied to law school. I just didn't know what to do, so I applied to them. And the whole time at university, I was cooking as a part-time job. Really enjoyed it. And when I graduated in December, I had admission into grad school that next August. But I had a good chunk of time where I started cooking full-time and really fell into it, fell in love with it. That was, I think it's really funny. I'm probably one of the only American chefs that got interested in cooking through English food. I know that sounds absurd, but well, I just remember being BBC America came out in the States probably end of the late 90s. Don't hold me to that, 99 or so. And I graduated high school in 2001, and we used to watch a lot of BBC America for whatever reason at university. And I started that's when Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares and F Word came out, and then Hugh Fernley Withingstall with the River Cottage stuff. I was just I just loved it. I think I could associate with River Cottage, seeing what they were doing, and kind of loosely associated with the farming that my grandfather and uncles and stuff did. So that was always something I became super interested in. But that was, I didn't think I'd ever be a chef. I thought I would probably be a college professor somewhere, doing who knows what, teaching philosophy or something.
Where did you make the call to sort of cement a career in hospitality, and what was it like those first couple of years?
I was working at a really nice restaurant in North Carolina, and using a lot of great local produce and things. It was, at the time, I thought that was fine dining compared to my food, the food history I had growing up. We never went to fancy restaurants or anything. So I was like, this place is one of the best restaurants in the world. And shortly after you learned that maybe that wasn't the best restaurant in the world, but they cooked great things with great produce. Made a very conscious effort to utilize small farms and things. which I really loved about it. This one guy would come, he'd back his pickup truck to the back gate of the restaurant, and it'd just be full of tomatoes. We'd just go out there and pick all the tomatoes we wanted for the next couple of days. And this would happen every few days during summer. And then there's always someone coming to the back of the restaurant and dropping off stuff, or you pick what you want and just pay for it. So that was interesting. So I tried to get a job in New York City, and no one would hire me because I just had a little bit of experience in North Carolina. So I said, I deferred admission to grad school. I was like, I'm going to put it off here, kept that line open, and decided to try to make it in New York City. And I couldn't get a job that I kind of wanted to work at. So then I went to CIA for not very long, which is the Culinary Institute of America. I started. We do class during the day, and I would take a train down to New York City after class almost every day, 4 or 5 times a week, and then just stage at a restaurant, and then get the train back at like 1 a.m. You sleep for a couple hours and go to school. So that's just what I was doing, and finally ran into April Bloomfield at the Spotted Pig, and she was like, "You're wasting your time and money at culinary school. Let me offer you a job." And that was not because I don't think because I was some great chef by any stretch of the imagination. I just think she liked the determination or whatever. I was not a good chef at the time. I fully admit that. But then I had a really bad car accident like the next week, and that was it. I didn't think I'd ever cook again. I thought that was pretty much done. I was still at CIA, and I was driving from Poughkeepsie to New Paltz and had a car accident and broke my pelvis, broke my foot, broke my hip in half, broke my pelvis in half, broke my hip, tore my knee ligaments, broke my arm. It was a pretty bad car accident, and so that was it. I was shelved up I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and then I just in a wheelchair for another 8 weeks after that, and then with the walker, and then I was at my parents' house for a good while of that time, and I watched a lot of BBC America. I'm not even lying. It's like pretty much nonstop BBC America. But yeah, that was. I thought I was done because it took me so long to be able to walk again. I didn't know if I'd be able to stand doing 10, 12-hour days in the kitchen. But that, over time and yeah, it was really interesting doing that. After a few weeks, and this is probably the only reason I went back into cooking. After a few weeks, April, I doubt she'll even remember me working for her or this even happening. But she texted me and asked if I was okay because she hadn't heard from me for a while. And I told her I had a car accident. And then she was like, "All right, well, when you recover, let me know and just come to work for us." And I was like, I said thank you. And then every few weeks she would send me a text message and ask me if I was all right. And that kind of kept me going. Kept me interested in cooking as opposed to just defaulting and going back to grad school. And then after a while, I went to just said I got back where I could stand on my feet for a while and all that, and moved to New York. And the rest is history.
You ended up working at the Spotted Pig. What was it like finally getting there and working with April?
She was great. She's the best chef I've ever worked for, and everyone I know that worked for us said the same thing. It's just her attention to detail is something that it is unrivaled, and how you have to make this food look perfectly rustic. It's an insane way to plate food. It looks like it's not manipulated, but it is definitely manipulated. The food that she does and the way she layers things and builds dishes and textures and hides things in dishes. It's unreal. I love working for her. I didn't work for her for as long as I wanted to or should have. That was due to the car accident. I was getting a little too. I'll never like say I was addicted to painkillers or anything like that. I don't want to, try to put a spin on it, but I was getting a little too comfortable with just working, taking painkillers when I probably more than I should be to actually work. And it was a conversation that because it was long days and late nights at the Spotted Pig. We'd finish at 2 a.m. And then I'd get my hour train back to my apartment, and then go to bed at 5 or 6 in the morning and sleep until 9 or 10. I just wasn't. I just couldn't sleep well because of my hip pain and stuff, and I was probably a little too comfortable taking pain medicine to work. So I had a conversation with her, and she totally understood. And then I got a job that finished a little bit earlier in the in the evening, so I could sleep well and recover and all that.
It's such a huge accident and impact on you physically and mentally, and chefs are standing up all the time. It's such a physical, unrelenting sort of job. How did you manage, that recovery and working and earning your stripes in a kitchen to ensure that your health?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it was just stupidity and pushing through, ignoring the pain signals. But I guess I understood too from like conversations with my doctor and surgeon that there would always be like a small base level of not necessarily pain, but being uncomfortable with the injuries that I had. So I just kind of knew when to push it, knew when I had to like acknowledge it and make sure I was doing stretches and foam rolling and all that stuff to help out with the process. But yeah, a lot of it's just, there's, even if you have no injuries to yourself, working in the kitchen's hard, and it grinds you out pretty quickly. It's definitely similar to like being an athlete. There's a limited time frame where you can do it as well as you should be able to do, and it's a young person's game for sure.
You had that accident at a time when you were quite young, and it was a formative period, and you'd been to university, and you kind of wanted to get into food. Did that sort of experience and that accident have an impact on sort of you in regards to what you wanted to get out of your life moving forward?
I think you do realize how precious things are. You're still young enough where you probably don't fully understand it. You still think you can do anything whenever you want to do it. But yeah, it definitely made me be a little bit more thankful for everything and the experiences that I had the opportunity to do after the accident. 100%.
You've been such a fixture in Australian culinary landscape for over a decade now. What triggered a move to Australia?
A friend of mine, his name's Luke Morrison. He, not a chef, he just studied abroad at the university that I went to. We became very good friends. He's from Melbourne, and he he just kept coming back to America and sleeping on my couch for a couple of months at a time. In New York for a month at a time. It just kept happening. So I think on the backside, I may be wrong about this, but I think for Australia's involvement in the Middle East crisis around, the backside of 9/11, America gave Australia some different visas for Australian employees, and then Australia gave America the work and holiday visa scheme. So when that kind of kicked through, he sent me an email and he was like, "Do you want to come stay on my couch for a couple of months?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's it." I had zero intentions of ever living here. I was going to come down, hang out, maybe get a job um, for 6 months, and then the plan. This is insane. Was to go up and take the Trans-Siberian Railroad to Moscow, and then another train from Moscow to London, and try to find a job there. I had a couple of friends that had worked in London and had some contacts there, but that never happened. I've never been on that train, and I've been in Australia since 2010.
What did you think of the restaurants and the culinary landscape when you first arrived? Did it surprise you?
It did. It was just so different. I mean, like, there's not much culture shock between Australia and United States. It's, yeah, I think the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, it's very similar. The newer countries, obviously, there's not that long European history of England or Ireland or something like that. So they're all very similar countries. Coming to Australia, not much of a culture shock at all, but the restaurants were so different. I'd never, at that time, and I still think today, it's definitely changing today, but at the time, there was like no middle tiered restaurant. It was kind of like the pub dominated everything. So you had these really high end restaurants that were amazing, really good, maybe like first generation or even like immigrant restaurants, where there's Middle Eastern or Asian or whatever. But those were kind of cheap and cheerful for reasons that's been talked about for many of times. But there was no like middle ground. I felt like the pub just kind of dominated. So finding a job was different. Looking at restaurants I would probably never apply to, that types of restaurants I'd never apply to in New York. I was applying to here, and it opened up some doors for me. That changed how I looked at food and stuff. And I won't lie, the first couple of trials I did in Australia, I was kind of unsold on the food scene here. I won't say any names. That would be silly. But one was a 2-hat restaurant and one was a 3-hat restaurant, and I did those 2 trials, and then I looked for plane tickets back to America. I was like, I don't know if I can, because I thought I would save some money to do this trip, in the Trans-Siberian Road, but I'd pretty much blown through all the money I brought, and I was like, I got to go back to the States. And then the next day, Andrew McConnell called me for a job at Cutler & Co. I applied for a job at Cutler before I came and never heard anything back. And then I got here and I applied for a job after those trials went badly, I'd sent a resume to Cumulus. And then Andrew called me and was like, I have a job for you at Cutler & Co. And that was so much fun. Such a great restaurant to work at. Andrew's an amazing chef, and the way he views food and products and stuff is really second to none.
Do you have any stories of what it's like to work with Andrew and in his kitchens?
He's just, he's so switched on and so smart, but he doesn't like ever try to he doesn't sit there and like belittle you or talk just to talk so people know that he's smart or anything. He's really reserved, but he also has like some hilariously moments of chaotic energy that are. I just remember one night we were setting up for service. I want to say we were probably within 15 or 30 minutes of opening for service, and he comes in and just turns on. No, I can't even think of the. Oh man, what it was that viral clip of hide your children, hide your wives. Someone had broken into someone's home and they made this crazy like auto-tune song about it, and he comes in and plays it. Whatever out of 100 it was it was as loud as possible the speaker could go, and it's just, and then that went segued right into Peaches, and I could see. I mean, I don't know. The kitchen couldn't recover from that. It was pretty funny, but it was just like he knows how to have a good time, and uh, he has very clear expectations of staff, but it's not. It was never a miserable place to work. It was hard, but a lot of fun, and that's a very difficult thing to achieve in a kitchen.
Rockwell and Sons is something we haven't touched on yet, but it made such a huge impact on not only Melbourne, but across Australia, and was on the best burgers list, won best burger in Australia, all sorts of things. How did it start?
That again was just pure stupidity. me and my business partner Manu had we'd done a few pop-ups in around Melbourne, a couple of events and things. Linked up with some people from Good Beer Week at its very like infantile like conception of it, like, and they asked us to do some events for them. Uh, so we had like a little bit of a fun following going on, and we met a guy who had a cafe on Smith Street, and he offered us the space to come in, and we had no business opening a restaurant. We had no business running a restaurant. Rockwell and Sons had zero business ever staying in business, but we somehow, like, just through our hard work, it finally caught on. It was we had no idea what we were doing. We kind of wanted to open up this, and the Rockwell what became Rockwell is not the restaurant we opened. We were just trying to open like these restaurants that we loved in Brooklyn, which would make way more sense now in the Melbourne dining scene, because that middle tier of dining has really established itself, with the wine bars and the similar kinds of restaurants. We were these restaurants in Brooklyn where you could go in, have a really great meal, seasonal produce and stuff, or you could sit at the bar and have like a great cocktail and eat a burger. It was kind of however you wanted to use the restaurant. So we were getting like whole pigs in, whole lamb, like doing these composed dishes, lots of vegetable dishes and stuff. And then I just, at the very last minute, we had a flat top left over from the cafe, and I was like, oh, we should do a burger. And the burger would be like, something we would probably sell like 10 a night of. That's what I thought. People would maybe come in and have a burger at the bar and leave. I thought we were really going to build like a Collingwood locals type restaurant, and that very quickly turned into a burger restaurant. There wasn't that many of them at the time. I think Huck's Burger it hadn't been open super long. I wouldn't say it, maybe 6 months before we opened, 8 months. I could be wrong on that. I know it wasn't a super long time before we opened, but there wasn't. I think that was just right at the cusp of the whole burger thing popping off in Melbourne. And you saw a lot of the global financial crisis and the Australian dollar being so strong, just opened up all the travel to America. So you get all these American food ideas coming back. That was when Mexican, like that, like kind of American Mexican restaurant was going huge in Australia and stuff like that. So it really, I think that lined up, and people kind of had fun in doing vacations to American stuff, and it kind of embraced like this like burger and fried chicken kind of thing that popped off in Melbourne and across the country. And we were just there at the right time, I guess.
Tell us a little bit about the burger that you were doing, because it was a little bit different to traditionally what Australians know of a burger.
I mean, to be honest, it was just a double quarter pounder with cheese with Big Mac sauce. Which is essentially, that's pretty much what it was. But yeah, the biggest thing we tried to do was we wanted a burger that was the same year round. And that's just all I wanted to do. Like, it was, I didn't want to put vegetables and stuff on it. So I don't love tomatoes and lettuce on burgers at the best of times. But yeah, like just the idea of using out of season produce on this burger and treating the burger as seriously as we treated the other dishes on the menu, which is probably why it stuck. But like looking back on it, we when we built the menu, we put as much time into this as we did to the dishes that we're using the whole animals for, and some of the awfully dishes that we had to start. You know, we opened up with a sweet bread and carrots dish, and corned beef or ox tongue and stuff. So it's like these fun little dishes that we built. We put as much time into this burger, and it really stuck. It was just trying to get I found a lot of the burgers in Australia were very gristly, and I think that was probably just trying to get as much money as the cow out of the whole cow as possible from the butcher shop. So we had to work with some people to get like the minced blend that we really wanted for the burgers. Had to use American cheese because that is just the best burger cheese. And then just a very simple sauce that we put on the burger, and that was it. And I think people embraced the simplicity of it.
You ended up closing Rockwell and Sons in 2019. Was that a hard decision to make?
Not at all. It was still making very good money for me and Manu. It wasn't something like touch and go, like, should we close it, should we not? We just simply didn't want to do it anymore. I think we had grown up a little bit since we opened it. It was food that we were less and less likely to eat on even on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis. And we just had the tough decision one day to be like, let's close it down in a month. And the rent was still like really reasonable. And we had money set aside, so we didn't have to like scramble to do something else. And had the last month that we were open, the last couple of weeks we were open, was insanity. The amount of people flying in from interstate multiple times to eat before we closed. A couple people got tattoos of Rockwell and Sons. I'm not joking. It's insanity. I think we kind of lost sight of how much people adored it because me and Manu were tired of it. You know, it is kind of this thing that we had fallen out of love with, but it was still such a big part of a lot of people's like life. And I still get people that come up to me and that I don't remember meeting or I've never met, who just recognize me from Rockwell and Sons and talk about it. And, it's always very humbling. But yeah, we just, one day we're like, let's just do it. Let's just close it, or we're never going to close it. We closed it and came up with a couple ideas. And then luckily, Christine Tran, our business partner, fell into our laps, and we decided to open a bakery. That was kind of, that was with me and Manu and Michael, who's just left the group a few months ago. Like super, super driven, talented guy. Like he's such a gem for the industry, and he's focusing on a couple other projects that he has going. But yeah, like we bumped into Christine, and Manu had, I think, hung out with her in San Francisco or Copenhagen at some food conference and became kind of friendly. And yeah, next thing you know, we were opening a bakery.
You mentioned, around the decision to close Rockwell and Sons was that you were a little bit more mature and it wasn't the kind of food that you would eat, on a fortnightly basis. Tell us a little bit about your approach to food and cooking and what you'd like to do.
I really enjoy building relationships with like farmers, and I know it's kind of a cliche thing that all chefs say nowadays, but I like getting the farm list, or I have, when I was doing more menu stuff, now I don't really do much of any food. I just help people with their ideas, but when I'm building a menu or something, I just love getting the emails from the farms and them telling me what they have, as opposed to be like, I want to make a fennel dish and or whatever, and buying. I mean, you get good produce from the veg suppliers in Melbourne. There's no shortage of great produce in this country, but like knowing that the farmer's like picking on Wednesday and giving it to you on Thursday is a different ballgame, and it's really a restrictively fun way to cook because you see what's coming in and you build your menus around that. And I can see how some people would think that seems really, it restricts you in a negative way, but I think it restricts you in a good way because it forces you to use produce that you may not normally use, or force you to use ideas how to work through it and stuff. And I just love cooking like that. And it's pretty much like how we ate growing up. Obviously, my grandparents would preserve things in jars, and they, like I said, would fill our basement. But you would definitely eat squash casserole almost, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week. It seemed like in the summertime when squash were growing everywhere. Because, like summer squash, our little crookneck squash that we have in the South, they're like a little yellow, very similar to zucchini. And they grow the same as zucchini everywhere. You can't stop them. Once like if you grow a zucchini at your house now, you have to eat zucchini. Like you have to beg your friends to take it from you because there's so much zucchini during the summer. Like just on one plant if you grow in your backyard. And that's the same. So we would, you just have to eat what's in season all the time to utilize its product. And that's kind of, I guess, trickled into how I cook now. It's just really like Chloe from Somerset Heritage Produce in Seymour was so much fun to work with. She would send me texts about things that were too small to put on her farm list and ask me if I wanted to buy them to use because we'd always take stuff like that, whether we would preserve it or use it on Sunday lunch menus at Bar Liberty, or you can put most things on a pizza at Capitano. That's one thing I learned. Like everything cooks well on pizza. So, but yeah, that's how I like to cook. Kind of, and having ADD, ADHD, it's having a limited amount of products that you can use really helps you menu plan as well. You can cook with these 20 things this week. That becomes a fun way to build stuff, I think.
You originally came to Australia to sleep on a couch for a couple of months, but you've been here for over a decade. What is it about Melbourne that's kept you here?
I just love the city and how it just embraces everything. Whether it's art or film or food, beer, wine, cheese. It just the city is so welcoming and they're so supportive. Like just the best. I mean, I say the city. I mean, I should probably be truthful. I never leave the inner north. As far west I go as Carlton, as far east I go as Abbotsford, and maybe Fitzroy North or Carlton North every now and again. But our little pocket of restaurants and where I live is amazing. And I think it's the whole city. I got friends with restaurants all over the city, and it's the same. We talk about it a lot. It's the same sentiment. It's just like how supportive everyone is and how great the customers are. And once you gain their trust, they're open to try anything or drink anything or there's no limits to the clientele around here, I think, in terms of like being open-minded.
You've got 3 incredible venues that really speak of the middle market in Melbourne and doing amazing things. What do you love about what you do?
I think, I love cooking. I love the actual physicality of it and, the sounds and smells and colors of cooking. But I think the kind of the best thing about what we do is, as an industry, like we're who people turn to celebrate. or to fall in love or to celebrate love or anything as corny as that. It really is. It's us to deliver the best nights of people's lives. Like you come in you catch up with two friends on a Tuesday and you haven't seen them in a couple of years. And next thing you know, you've been at the restaurant for 5 years and you've, had a couple bottles of wine or a couple of cocktails and you've had a great meal and you go on and people remember that. People talk about these meals and these experiences more so than probably anything. And I think that's the beauty of the industry. And sometimes it gets lost because it is a hard industry to A, be successful in it, and B, to actually work in. But it's take a step back and really look at what we do for people's enjoyment in their lives. I think is a beautiful thing about the industry.
It's a really wonderful vision of what hospitality means to everyone. Casey, it's been an absolute honour catching up with you today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch and we'd love to catch up again soon.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.